Good evening, everybody. And on behalf of Speaking Tiger Publishers, Talking Cub, and Kahani Kancheti, and I think I've got the names right, big welcome for this evening session. This is the kind of what we call is a joint venture between Kahani Kancheti and Talking Cub. And what we will be doing today is we'll be having a author's chat with Tilottama Shom. Now, Tilottama has recently translated in English 2 classics, which is why we are calling this session Talking Classics. And Talking Classic, she has translated 2 books by Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhuri. We'll come to Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhuri in a while. And one is, of course, the Ramayana, and the other is the story of Gupi and Bagha, later made into a film by his grandson Satyajit Ray called Gupi Ka and Bagha Bayan. So we have with us Tilottama over here. But before that, I want to just take you through a little chat on Talking Cub. Now, Talking Cub is actually the children's imprint of the independent publishing house Speaking Tiger Books. It was started in 2018. And Talking Cub has established itself as an imprint with exciting books, both fiction and non-fiction, for children of all ages, which means that if we also consider ourselves to be children, and I can assure you some of the books are even worth reading for us. And they publish poetry, short stories, novels, books on history, biographies. So it's a huge repertoire that they have, even picture books and many more. Now, Talking Cub has published authors such as Jerry Pinto, Bulbul Sharma, Paro Anand, Ranjit Lal, Deepa Agarwal, Baijal Vacharajni, Andalib Wazid, and Aruna Bosina, who has translated Shukumar Roy's Hojoboro law called Haber Jabal Law into English. And of course, they have also published books by Shubhodra Sengupta, whom we lost very recently. So that's Talking Cub. And now I invite Tilottama Shom to come and join us in this Adda session. And hello, Tilottama, and
Hi.
Welcome to this session. Hi. All
Thank
right.
you.
Now, I think first let me introduce Tilottama to you. Then we will bring in Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhuri, and then we will take it on from there. So Tilottama actually is she's an architect by profession, right? And she's a committed wanderer. She keeps wandering to a lot of places. She writes and she reads a lot of Bangla. I'm not using the word Bengali books, but she reads a lot of Bangla. And in the process of this Bangla, she has translated a number of books into English. And 2 of them, which we'll be discussing today, I think I'll just show them for, one is, of course, this Adventures of Gupi and Bagha. There you are. And the other is the book on the children's Ramayana, right? So these are the ones in for discussion today, which have been published by Talking Cub. Now, Tilottama also has a very interesting thing other than being a wanderer, a writer, and she has a series called Letters to Pia, which is apparently exchange of letters between her and her 17-year-old daughter, who is going to go to Yale. So I'm going to ask Tilottama by telling us, tell us something about this very interesting Letters to Pia. I mean, your daughter is going to Yale, and you all are both sharing the changes in your lives. Is that what I understand is Letters to Pia all about?
Yeah. So this year is actually quite a milestone year for us in different ways. One is that Pia goes off to college, and she turns 18 later on this year, and I turn 50 this year. So it's a sort of a watershed year when we kind of we are kind of exploring new things in our lives, both of us, and so it was an idea that we should start this conversation between the 2 of us, where we discuss this period of transition exchange little bits of wisdom, not just from me to her, but also from her to me, because there's lots of wisdom coming from her side to me as well. And and then there is, of course, a lot of meaningless chit chat and light-hearted stuff, family stuff. And we express our opinions, tell each other what we think about different things. And so that's how this series started. And we are sharing this on our Facebook page, which is called Dear Pia, Letters of Light and Truth. And so we are enjoying it as a process. And I thought it would be a great way to sort of record and archive this time in our lives, which is of transition, change, and new things, new hopes, new things, new beginnings for everybody. So, and also the thing is that this time in life is something that everybody goes through. Either you've already gone through or you will go through it. So the readers always have something to identify with, or to contribute, or even just to learn, maybe.
Well, I think it's a very bright idea, Tilottama, number one. And number two, I wish I had done this with my son when, I was going through that phase myself. I missed the bus. All right. Yeah. I hope you all continue this. And I'm sure all of us, at least I will start following this on Facebook page. Another thing I see that, you have been wandering a lot of to the Northeast. You have been traveling a lot to the Northeast because you have been doing a lot of work over there. So can you tell us something about your trips to the Tripuras and the Mizorams and Arunachal and the Seven Sisters? Yeah.
Actually, I did this series of Facebook Live events with this platform called A Story Club. So they, with them, I did, every episode was on one of the states. And we included Sikkim in this. So because now Sikkim is part of the Seven Sisters, will actually stay its sister. And so we basically explored all kinds of things, the history, the archaeology, wherever available, the political situations, wherever there is a significant contribution by the British Empire, we spoke about that. Then we described and talked about their culture, the traditions, food. We talked a lot about food, which was great fun, and festivals, and just beautiful places. And we really enjoyed. And I had this as a Facebook Live event. They're all there online still for people to see, and it was great fun because we could talk about. And each of these states is a jewel, actually. So they are like pieces of jewelry. So, and lots to talk about, and very little known actually in the rest of the country. So gave us the opportunity to talk about things which were absolutely new to a lot of us. And we had very good feedback from the audience on that.
Excellent. And later, after this event is over, I'm going to ask you, did the then governor of Tripura invite you to the governor's house and feed you? The then governor.
Are you talking about Tathagata Roy?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. This is not.
He's a friend of mine. He's actually a relative of mine. So he came to our show. He came to our show as an ex-governor, both for Tripura and for the Meghalaya shows, because he's been there, and we had wonderful chats with him and his wife. So
yeah. So I saw he and his wife chatting with you on the Facebook page. So I said, this is okay. Now to come back to the discussion, and we are already 9 minutes into our thing, and we have been this as it happens, and this is to everybody. Two Bengalis start off, it turns into an adda. You discuss more things than what you are supposed to discuss, and that's perfectly how it is going. It should go. And another Bengali coming into the picture right now is Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary. Now let me start off by giving you first. Not from my point of view, from my generation's point of view, of our equation with, whom we call ourselves the slightly delayed Midnight's children, within the 5-6 years band of 1947, I call them the delayed Midnight's children. So for us, our first two two or three authors we grew up with, and we were given all this as gifts, birthday gifts. One was, of course, Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary, and that was the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So all we know about the Kaikais and Ghatotkachs and all the drama that happens in this mythology came to us from Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary. A number of fantasies and very, what shall I say, amusing books came again from him in Tuntunir Boi. And of course, I had not read The Adventures of Gupi and Bagha till, of course, the film was made. I must admit that. But yes, Ramayana and Mahabharata, I think our generation. And at that point of time, we also read Tagore. We also read Hemendra Kumar Rai. We also read, well, some Shukumar Rai, his son, because Abul Tabul and Khai Khai were a part of our staple diet. It still is. Thankfully, it still is. But Tilottama, there's one point I'm going to ask you a little later. The fact is, at that point of time, a lot of people now know him to be the grandfather of Satyajit Ray. I mean, there is this vampire effect, as we call it, in advertising has happened. He is known as the grandfather and of Satyajit Ray and father of Shukumar Rai. But people don't know the fact that he has been one of the pioneers in terms of printing, block making, particularly half-tone blocks experiments. And also, he was a painter. He was a composer. He sang songs and he played the musical instruments and has written two iconic books. One is, of course, Sahoj Behala Part, that is easy lessons to violin, Behala as we call it. And of course, the Shikhok Batirik harmonium, that is how to play the harmonium without a trainer. And his books were published by Dwarkins, which belong to Dwarakanath Ghosh. And he named that brand Dwarkin Harmoniums. And some of the Dwarkin Harmonium, they still continue to be a huge brand in Bengal, for sure. Now, this is now coming to business, so to say. What made you, I know you must have been reading a whole lot of stuff. What made you pick on translating Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary?
Firstly, I must say that the original Ramayana and Mahabharata written by Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary were named Cheleder Ramayana and Cheleder Mahabharata. So they were meant for, but to be fair, in Bangla, the word Chele also refers to children in general, which is also kind of skewed, but they were Cheleder Ramayana and Cheleder Mahabharata. So the thing is that even as a child myself, though I'm not in the same generation as the late midnight ones, but I read Cheleder Ramayana and Cheleder Mahabharata a lot. Like repeatedly, I read them many times as a child, probably when I was 6-7 years old or something like that. So it's a book that has been continuously in print for decades. I don't think it's ever gone out of print. And so I had a good understanding of the book. I had enjoyed it a lot as a child, and I never thought of it as a serious book. Actually, it came across as a book of adventure of these three people, Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, and it had a great connect with me as a child. And so when Speaking Tiger, which is Talking Cub, when they approached me with the proposal to translate it, I immediately thought that, this is something that I could do, because it's a classic, yet it's not a really serious, sort of a classic, and I'll enjoy it. And in Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary's writing style is very light and modern and contemporary. Whatever the time period that you're reading it at, doesn't matter. It's very casual. And I kind of identify with this whole casual approach. And so I just went into it quite naturally, the whole translation bit. And the other thing is that it's hilarious at bits, It's a story which is known very well by the Indian audience, but it's read as a piece of holy scripture or with something with morals attached and, that sort of a thing. But the way Cheleder Ramayana is written is actually less of that and more of an adventure story with a lot of humor thrown in and some of it is dark humor, some of it is slapstick. So I really enjoyed that whole new approach. Well, it's not a new approach, but a different approach to an epic. And yeah, so that's what made me take to this very eagerly, let's say.
All right. And, since you mentioned that Cheleder meant children, that's the umbrella word for it. There is a kind of, or there used to be a kind of a binary diversification of those Cheles. The Bata Chele meant a boy and a May Chile meant a girl. So that was the breakup between the Cheleder. But having said that, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, I've read your book and it's really wonderful, so easy flowing. You keep moving on and on, and you are waiting for the more drama, though you know the drama. I mean, most of it obviously we know.
Yeah.
But then you're still waiting. What happens now? Oh my God! All right, fine. So what will Hanumanji do? And so on and so forth. But the thing is, how could you keep track of so many characters, this cast and crew that has set up the Mahabharata? I mean, Ramayana and Mahabharata. I mean, did you sort of give a computerized checklist to tick boxes? Keep acha kai hoye gache, cut. Next, now you have. It must have been a humongous task to have so many people tracking so many people.
I have a multifarious approach to this whole exercise. Okay. Firstly, I stick to the original script mostly, which is the original manuscript, and I follow the story as I translate. So it's not like I'm suddenly going to one condo and then another condo and going back and forth in time. No, I follow the chronology. So if I follow the chronology, it kind of allows me to keep track of the events and characters. And I make rudimentary notes, which are really scribbles actually, things to keep in mind. And it's not a very scientific approach, I have to tell you. And I drink a lot of wine usually when I translate, so that helps. I don't think,
Love that.
I don't think I've forgotten anybody as yet, despite this really chaotic approach towards translation. But yeah, that's how I mean, if you have to just come down to the reduce it to its essence, it's basically that I follow the original script and the chronology that the story has been originally written. So that helps me keep track.
Okay. Before I ask you this question, this very obvious question, that since you have done the Ramayana, and I'm now going to ask you to read from the book, that will be the best way. But before that, I'm going to ask you this one small question. Will you also be doing the Mahabharata?
Well, the intention is there fully to do it. And it depends on the publisher, of course, when they decide to take it on as a thing on their calendar. I would love to do it because the Cheleder Mahabharata is equally entertaining to read as a child. And why not? Yeah, I would love to do it actually.
Lovely. Yeah, because it would be a lovely companion volume to the Ramayana. So now will you read that? And then we will go to Gupi and Bagha and Hundi and Allah and all that. So let's hear you read this.
So I selected a passage which is a little bit sort of not the usual passages that one reads from this book. I'm reading it because it's kind of slightly morbid, but it's very hilarious the way it has been written. So it's a showpiece on how Upendra Kishore Roy Chaudhary would write his stuff. So this is when Dasharath has just died. And we know that Dasharath dies out of sorrow, really, because he has had to send his son away for 14 years against his own will, and he is in great grief, and in the process of in his grief, he dies. And then Upendra Kishore Roy Chaudhary's Cheleder Ramayana describes what happens. The next morning, when everyone tried to awaken him, they realized he had died at night. The whole city was submerged in sorrow. Bharat and Shatrughna were not in Ayodhya yet. Dasharath's cremation could not be done in their absence. Messengers were sent to bring them back, and Dasharath's body was kept submerged in a vat of oil as the people of Ayodhya awaited Bharat and Shatrughna. Bharat was happily residing at his uncle's house. He was unaware of the misfortune that had befallen Ayodhya. One day he dreamt that King Dasharath was covered in dirt and had fallen off a hill. There was a pool of oil at the foot of the hill and he had drowned in the oil. After that, he got onto a donkey cart and started traveling to the south. This is Dasharath after he had died. This dream upset Bharat. He could not enjoy the day with his friends. And in a while, a messenger arrived from Ayodhya and said, "Prince, please leave for Ayodhya quickly. Something has happened there and you need to be present immediately." So why I find this extremely amusing is that Dasharath has died, and firstly, they have this very unique way of preserving his body, which is in submerging it in a vat of oil. I really don't know if all these details are there in the original Ramayana, or are these details added by Upendra Kishore Roy Chaudhary or what, but they are there in his version. And then this dream that Bharat has is also very wacky. So in the middle of this really somber moment, he adds these kind of dark humor, which made me laugh a lot. So yeah, I found that very amusing. Yeah, so that was my
yes, yeah. All right. So that's Sudeshna has a point. She said this is a superb bit, right? And Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary in top form. I guess UKR must be Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary. And yes, it's a lovely translation. And as a matter of fact, I must tell you, when I was reading this myself, this book, this vat of oil even caught my fancy. And I said, at a date guy, the king is all right.
And
so
the dream of him falling into a pool of oil and dying.
Knowing that his progeny was Sukumar Rai, and all kinds of fantasies and absurdities that he made us grow up. It must have been, he must have added all that, so that must have been what must have happened. Okay, now let's move on to, but tell me something, this was not your first translation, was it? This was not your first published translation work?
This was my first translation.
This was your first translation. Okay, all right. Oh, fine. So 10 more points, 10 more brownie points. Amazing. This is the first translation. Really, really. And now let's come to the adventures of Gupi and Bagha. But before we get on to Gupi and Bagha, there is something that I would like to tell viewers over here, that in this children's Ramayana, the illustrations, two things that we must talk about, and I'm sure Tilottama will fully agree with me. One is, of course, the illustrations in the book. As you can see, I'm holding up to this page.
They're absolutely fantastic, the illustrations.
Absolutely fantastic. And that's number one. And this Priyankar Gupta has done an amazing piece of work. And
Priyankar has a whole portfolio of fantastic book illustrations. This is only one of them. And,
that's right. And and the production of this book, again, full marks.
Excellent.
Some extra marks. Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Now
I think Speaking Tiger in general, all their books, the production quality is really, really good, and one can be proud of being associated with them. And
yes, absolutely.
I can say that I'm really always proud to say, this is the quality of, this is the kind of book that has been published under my.
Yes, and we can back this up by showing this adventures of Gupi and Bagha, right? And look at and I'm not just talking about the printing production quality. Look at the inside page layouts, if you can see very clearly. And for children, it's look at the spacing, look at the type font. Those are factors that matter hell of a lot in coming out with the children's book in particular, right? And it's a handy small size. And yes. Before I get on to Tilottama's translation, Shayon Mukherjee's illustrations.
Brilliant illustrations.
Brilliant illustration.
And he was given to do them in monochrome. He's done a brilliant job with each piece. And they're so funny. And he's gotten his own sort of interpretation of what these characters should look like.
Exactly.
The bhoots.
And there is,
If you want to share the picture of the bhoot.
yeah, the ghosts, the boots. Here they are.
Yes.
The ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a sorry, this is the problem with StreamYard. You go on the reverse direction. It's reverse engineering.
Yes.
So here are the boots who are all over here. Bhuted Raja Dilbor is probably somewhere tucked in between these pages, these illustrations. Now, one question other than the translation, even us, all of us, the world, have been, what shall I say, we got familiarized with the Gopi and Bhaga because of the film, because of the songs and what all happened. And we had never seen a film like that till this happened. And then, of course, Hirok Raja and all that followed later. When you were translating, how much you were sort of, keeping your mind shut to the fact that, the influence of the cinema in the translation, and how much could you stick to the absolute original? This is what happens, when you make when you write a book based on a film. So tell us something about your translating the adventures of Gopi and Bhaga, which again, believe you me, and this is, I'm not saying because she's right now sitting in front of me, it's wonderful reading in English. And it has been kept within the parameters, within the limitations, and you're moving from, the sequences, which we all probably know because of the film, because of the cinema. But, it is moving, it keeps you moving from where the ghosts come and the songs happen and Halla happens and, So, yeah, Tilottama, I want you to tell us about the translating Gopi and Bhaga.
So Gopika and Bhagabain, of course, like you said, I was very familiar with the film, and I had seen it as a child and read the book almost at the same time. But there are differences in the story in between the film and the book, and so I kind of had kept myself isolated from the film version of it, except that when you're describing some things, the images pop into your head. But otherwise, I was following what Upendra Kishore Roy Choudhury wrote, which is what the translation is. What helped was that the fact that it was a universal story of friendship, magic, and travel, and music, and again some really funny bits. The fact that they are bad musicians, who appeal to the ghosts, kind of makes you doubt the musical sort of taste of these ghosts. And then, of course, the fact that being a wanderer myself, like you mentioned, that I am a wanderer, the big thing that appeals to me about Gopi Bhaga is the fact that they have this boon which allows them to go wherever they wish by clapping hands. And during the lockdown, that has been a big, sort of a dream that I wish Bhuted Raja would come and give me a bird. So it would allow me to not take an airline and just land somewhere. So yeah, I mean, it was translating Gopi Bhaga was primarily sort of a nostalgia fest for me in a way, because it reminded me of my childhood when I read the book, which was when I was still in Kolkata, and winter morning, sitting in the balcony and reading this book. And so I think
Right.
I really enjoyed doing it.
Lovely. Yeah, I think, and now you must also read a part of the adventures of Gopi and Bhaga, because we want to listen to that.
Yeah. So this part that I'm reading is when Gopi and Bhaga are they're trying to get the king, capture the king and bring him back to the Halla Raja. So they are waiting to capture the Shundi Raja, and they're waiting on top of this temple, and for the Raja to come and sit below, and then they have a plan. So later that night, Gopi and Bhaga got a variety of new and delectable sweets from their magical bag sat on the temple tower. They were wearing glamorous dresses, crowns on their heads, necklaces around their necks, bracelets on their wrists, and earrings on their ears. They were dressed like the gods. Nothing was visible through the smoke, but the king was sitting and staring at the sky. Suddenly, Gupi and Bhaga laughed out aloud and dropped the sweets on the king's head. He screamed and jumped 3 feet into the air. Then he recovered and started stuffing his mouth with sweets with both hands while dancing a merry jig at the same time. While this was going on, Gupi and Bhaga came down from the top of the temple and stood in front of the king of Shundi. "The gods have come!" Everybody shouted and started prostrating themselves on the floor as a mark of respect. The king just lay flat on the ground in front of them and kept striking his head on the ground. Gupi said kindly, "Your Majesty, we enjoyed your dance a lot. Come, let us embrace." The king was overwhelmed. How many people had the good fortune to be embraced by the gods? They started embracing, and the crowds yelled, "Victory, victory." Gupi and Bhaga took this opportunity and grabbed the king from both sides. They said in a loud voice, "Now we will go to our room." And immediately the three of them were transported to their room. The crowds in the temple stood staring at the sky with their mouths open for a long time. When the king did not return, they went back to their homes and said, "What a miracle we witnessed. The king ascended to the heaven in his human form. The gods came themselves to take him away." Yeah, so this is again a funny part where Gupi and Bhaga are mistaken to be gods, and they capture the Raja of Shundi and take him to Halla.
Exactly. In fact, what you're doing, in fact, there is Rupak has this to say, says that Darun, awesome way waking the memory lane. And that's exactly what is happening when you hear all this and you suddenly say, yes, we have gone through all this, we have lived. But another factor over here, going on from Gupi Gayan and Bhagabayan, translation of these heritage classics, if I may call them. These are all heritage classics. In English, certainly makes a lot of sense, because I'm telling you this for two reasons. One is, I know a lot of children, in this generation who are not used to reading Bangla. Many of them are not, they don't know Bangla that much, number one. Though Upendra Kishore and Sukumar Rai continue to, thrive. The books are all available. Now more books are available because everybody publishes them. Good quality English translations are a kind of difficult to get by. And I think that's where Talking Club have done a wonderful thing. The other point is, there is somebody I know, because the youngsters today are unable to read Bangla because, they have been born and brought up in other parts of the country and even abroad. They are actually writing all this in the Roman script. Like, that's how it is happening, which I think is quite pathetic. But then they are saying that at least that way we are able to popularize. But I think what the difference is, writing in Roman script and instead of, a translation. The translations, I think, are going to open up a new lot of people who are not just Bengalis. In fact, I think a lot of non-Bengalis would be actually adopting to, would be picking these up. And I wish they are all given out as gifts in birthday parties. Really, that's what I would suggest to anybody who would,
I always do that.
Yeah, I think these are the best things to give, so. The other question, from here, where do we go? You said you were looking at you possibly would be looking at Mahabharata, but any other translation that you have done recently, or you are planning in WIP, work in progress?
So I have done a couple of other translations for Pratham Books, who are also publishers. And I've translated Tagore's Dagghor, which is post office, which is a play, and his poem Shonartori, which is the Golden Boat. And so these I have already done. And work in progress, I'm currently in the middle of writing a series of books on our architectural heritage for children. So that is also with Speaking Tiger, Talking Cub. And Talking Cub, the people at Talking Cub and me, we kind of discussed how there is this gap in our awareness as children of our architectural heritage. We don't really talk about it in our school books or even otherwise. And our general orientation towards architecture and design is kind of very, very minimal. And that was a gap that was there. And so we kind of decided to do this series of books where each book is going to be the story of a particular monument. And so how it was made, who built it, the little bit of history behind it, and also introducing elements of architecture to the children's vocabulary, so they know that when building building something involves these kind of drawings, these kind of and this kind of an approach, the use of different materials, how the craftsmen work, all these things. So these books are going to be telling the stories. So that is a work in progress. Hopefully we'll have a few books out later this year with a lot of illustration. And
well, Tilottama, that is something that even I would be waiting for, very honestly, because these are things, up your interest list. So, and you don't have to be a children chime in. Of course, we are all children inside, but, forget the age and forget there's another book I want to add to your list. And that is again in Upendra Kishore, and that is Tuntunir Boi. Because like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, the Tuntunir Boi, and I have one viewer who has joined us. She actually, her nickname is Tuntun. And when we had asked her that, why are you calling Tuntun? I mean, we have sort of grown up together. And she said that, well, because of Tuntunir Boi. So, in our kind of generation, these characters from these books actually, became a part of your life. And that's how it has been. So, and thank you, Bala and Urbi Mala, for joining us today. And there is one point that I must put this up over here. Is from Sudeshna. She's saying that from your lips to parents' ears, Sujit, that about books as birthday party gifts. Actually, the fact is that on a serious note, there's Mala here and Urbi Mala. These two I can vouch for, and myself. When we were growing up, birthday parties meant, books. It only meant books. Nobody bought you a Lego. And at best, there were those jigsaw puzzles and Chinese checkers, they came as gift. But otherwise, it was all books. And that helped us to get on to the like Kai-Kais and all that all came in as gifts. And I think today, books, there can be no better birthday gifts than books, frankly. And with this kind of production that, Talking Cub have actually done, and it's really amazing that they should just be sold as books, as gifts, birthday gifts, if nothing else. And that's how it should be. And no, seriously, this is not, it should be, parents must listen to what I'm saying. I'm just putting that caveat over here. So taking that on, you will, yeah, that's right. Even Mala is saying it's absolutely true. So books, gifts as, and however, I must add a bit of two little small. There is a publisher in Delhi who publishes very voluminous books for children. So one day I had asked him, why do you have these thick books for children? Yeah, it's so difficult for them to carry. And he said that, no, my objective is not, kya padhenge, usme koi matlab nahi hai. So I said, Arey, you're publishing books and you're saying that you're not bothered as to who reads them. They're meant for children. He said, you don't understand. When there are these birthday parties, you have to give something, some big looking, never mind the content is. So they pick up them out from the sales counter of the bookstore, nursery rhymes and all that, which are thick. And then they get it properly wrapped. And, the mothers go and say, Bete, ye lo, tumhare liye gift hai. And everybody says, what a big fat gift. The books are never read. They are actually meant to be sold as birthday gifts. And that's where it ends. And one more thing, talking about Gopika and Bhagabayan, when the film was just released and there was a small little film festival type at Max Muller Bhavan I'm talking about 69. One of the 4 films that was shown was Gopika and Bhagabayan, and Satyajit Babu came himself to introduce and talk about. That was the whole thing. The film director will talk. And we were all, saying that, "Acha, how did you shoot that and how that happened?" And, he was standing in front of us and talking to us was, we were. But then somebody had the gumption to ask him that, "Excuse me, is this Hundi, Shundi and Halla and Hundi and Shundi as in the film? Are we talking about North Vietnam and South Vietnam?" Because if you remember, that the time that Gupi Gayan was made, the Vietnam War was actually right at its peak. So he said that this is supposed to be reflection on, to which he calmly said that when my grandfather wrote this story, there was actually no Vietnam, which is very correct. So that's how it is. So right now, having said all this, you will be doing Tuntunir Boi. Because so the way you are writing,
I had taken out Tuntunir Boi, my copy of it, because it's Upendra Kishore and we were going to talk about him. So I taken it out. That's my copy. And so I just wanted to read out the Gronthokarer Nivedon, the writer's
right.
What he has written. It says, সন্ধ্যার সময়ে শিশুরা যখন আহার না করিয়াই ঘুমাইয়া পড়িতে চায়, তখন পূর্ববঙ্গের কোনো কোনো অঞ্চলের স্নেহরূপিণী মহিলাগণ এই গল্পগুলি বলিয়া তাহাদের জাগাইয়া রাখেন। সেই গল্পের স্বাদ শিশুরা বড় হইয়াও ভুলিতে পারে না। আশা করি আমার সুকুমার পাঠক পাঠিকাদেরও এই গল্পগুলি ভালো লাগবে।
Well, absolutely correct, absolutely bang on. And if I were to take a cue, if we were all who are over here to take a cue from that Gronthokarer Nivedon, that they will remember it even for in their life, all through their life, which is true for Tuntunir Boi for all of us. I think it is very essential that you take that up also as a part of your agenda, because that English translation will help in remembering. And the kids will not be told to go to sleep because of shouting out the name of Gabbar Singh, which is normally what happens in North India. So there has to be. We must go back to the heritage and the traditional change. So that's where it is. Well, I think Tilottama, this has been a wonderful session of you taking us through these two translations. We discussing Bangla, Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhuri. And most importantly, I think a big thank you to Talking Cub and Speaking Tiger once again for taking the initiative for these translations to come out. And Aishwarya, just before we end, Aishwarya has got a point over here. She says, this is awesome. So glad, and congratulations to the panelists and Kahani Kancheti, spelling wrong. We are Kancheti with a K, for bringing a session on this topic. Yes, Aishwarya, thank you. I'll take you up on the spelling of Kahani Kancheti later. Your spelling is right, but we spell it another way around. That's because we want to be remembered. Thank you. So we look forward, Tilottama, really, frankly, we look forward to your translations, and we look forward to Talking Cub actually doing some more talking and, coming out with more translations from you. Because I think, that's with you, we are sitting on a gold mine, frankly. Take it as a compliment.
Thank you so much.
Super. And thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for coming in. Please keep tuned in to Speaking Tiger, Talking Cub, and Kahani Kancheti. We will be very soon coming up with more such authors' chats, and I hope you all will enjoy them as well. Thank you, Mala. And thank you, Pranay, who's here saying that they love the session. And thank you so much, Tilottama, for being with us. And
thanks a lot.
Lola Mathai is also here, looking forward. So yes, we are also looking forward. Please do more such sessions, says Rupok. We will do that. And Tilottama, for once, the internet behaved themselves. It behaved itself. The internet, we are all lucky. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Sujit. It was a great fun. Bye.
Super. Bye.